Well, apparently, a secret Russian foreign policy document has been procured showing that the Russians really are intent on spreading disinformation in the United States and using propaganda in order to brainwash us. Let's go over the document. This comes from Washington Post. Here's the title: Secret Russian Foreign Policy Document Urges Action to Weaken the U.S. Russia's foreign ministry has been drawing up plans to weaken its Western adversaries, including the United States, and leverage the Ukraine war to forge a global order free from what it sees as American dominance, according to secret foreign ministry document. In a classified addendum to Russia's official and public, so they have an official and public document that they put out there, they're saying that this is the secret one that they were able to procure, that is separate from this public document that put out there. And the public one is supposed to be like soft and flowery and seems kind and nice. And this other one has the sinister true plot of the Russians. But we're going to go over what that plot is. So this is a classified addendum to the official and public, what is called Foreign Policy Concept of the Russian Federation. The ministry calls for a, quote, offensive information campaign and other measures spanning the military, political, economic, trade, and informational psychological spheres against a coalition of unfriendly countries led by the United States. In other words, this means disinformation campaign against mean countries that are trying to isolate Russia. Goes on, it says, quote, this is from the sinister classified Russian document. We need to continue adjusting our approach to relations with unfriendly states, states the 2023 document, which was provided to the Washington Post by a European intelligence service, if that's not a red flag. Oh, the European intelligence, whichever European intelligence service that is, they came out, they found this document, and they're the ones who gave it to the Washington Post. So we don't even know if it's real. The Russians are saying, they're not commenting on this. Goes on to say, it's important to create a mechanism for finding the vulnerable points of their external and internal policies with the aim of developing practical steps to weaken Russia's opponents. So find the weak spots in their policies, in their external and internal policies, and exploit them. That's what this document says. It says the document for the first time provides official confirmation and codification of what many in Moscow elite say has become a hybrid war against the West. Russia is seeking to subvert Western support for Ukraine and disrupt the domestic politics of the United States and European countries through propaganda campaigns supporting isolationist and extremist policies. So wait a minute, let's just back up for a second there and reread this. So Russia is seeking to subvert Western support for Ukraine. Okay, fine. And disrupt the domestic policies of the United States and European countries. The domestic policies? Or do you mean the foreign policy? So they're trying to make it sound like the domestic policy that we care about is foreign policy. That's domestic, when really this is a foreign policy issue. But they're saying, oh, they're disrupting our domestic policies. It says this also seeks to refashion geopolitics, drawing closer to China, Iran, and North Korea in an attempt to shift the current balance of power. Can you blame them? I mean, when the United States and the West has gotten together and sanctioned everybody and bullied everybody, you can't blame anybody in the world, whether they be a sinister actor or just a nation that wants to maintain its sovereignty. You really can't blame anybody for wanting to break free from the chains, from the bondage of having to do whatever the West says, or else. You want to have alternatives. You want options. You don't want to just put all your eggs in one basket. So using much tougher and blunter language than the public foreign policy document, the secret addendum, which was dated April 11th of 2023, claims that the United States is leading a coalition of unfriendly countries aimed at weakening Russia because Moscow is a threat to Western global hegemony. Yes, that is what's happening. That's not a claim, that's the truth. So the document says the outcome of Russia's war in Ukraine will, to a great degree, determine the outlines of the future world order, a clear indication that Moscow sees the results of its invasion as inextricably bound with its ability and that of other authoritarian nations to impose its will globally. Well, it's not this is their neighbor. It's not really globally. I'd make the argument that what we're doing is globally, right? This is a country that is thousands and thousands of miles away. This is right on their border. So it's not really global influence. They're just trying to project regional influence. But sure, yeah, from the Russians' perspective, the outcome of that war in Ukraine determines the strength of the West. It determines, is the West strong enough to battle it out and beat Russia pretty much on their own turf. That would be a massive change. That would be definitely devastating for Russia. The foreign policy concept of the Russian Federation, which was published March 31st, 2023, so that's the public one, and approved by Russian President Vladimir Putin, deploys bland diplomatic language to call for the democratization of international relations, sovereign equality, and the strengthening of Russia's position on the global stage. So the foreign policy concept also charges that the United States and its satellites have used the Ukraine conflict to escalate a many years long anti-Russia policy. It also states that Russia does not consider itself an enemy of the West and has no ill intentions toward it. Russia hopes the West will, quote, realize the lack of any future in its confrontational policy and hegemonistic ambitions and will accept the complicated realities of the multipolar world, the public document states. So let's say they have this secret document, the secret, for one, again, found by some European intelligence ally. We don't really know if this is true, but let's say it is. And they've got this document circulating saying we've got to leverage inside of the United States the sentiments of the American people that are not interested in continuing the U.S. warmongery foreign policy. So what if that's what they want to do? So what if they attempt that? I mean, the American people are not being brainwashed by Russia. We have our own minds. We're able to think for ourselves. It's our own sentiments. Whether or not foreign and then one could make an argument that around the world, countries, since they are so heavily impacted by U.S. policy, should they or should they not have a say, or at least lobby in the same way that others are lobbied? You know, there's a discussion that could be had there, but that's not for today. Let's move on to the Daily Wire. They reported on the same thing. They're also highly anti. You know, they seem to be pro-war, I should say. Ben Shapiro and his crew. Daily Wire, secret Russian document reveals plan to target U.S. with offensive information campaign. House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCaul and Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner said that a portion of the Republican Party's base has bought into Russian propaganda thanks to what they described as conspiracy theory outlets and nighttime entertainment shows. Like this one. So these are two Republicans. Okay, Michael McCaul is a Republican from Texas. The Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner he's a Republican from Ohio, and they're saying this is Russian propaganda based on conspiracy theories that a portion of the Republican Party's base has bought into this. And what do they mean by that? They mean the anti-war America First sentiments that have been rippling through the Republican Party. They're saying that's Russian propaganda. How dare you want to be America first? That is Russia propaganda. Just listen to that. In an interview with Puck News, McCaul said, I think Russian propaganda has made its way into the United States, unfortunately, and it's infected a good chunk of my party's base. He said that the source of a lot of the propaganda has been some more nighttime entertainment shows that seem to spin. He says, like, I see the Russian propaganda in some of it, and it's almost identical to what they're saying on Russian state television on our airwaves, saying things like the reason for the war in Ukraine is NATO expansion, Western aggression towards Russia, Western rhetoric towards Russia, saying that we want an anti-war policy, an America First policy. This is apparently all Russian propaganda. He says, quote, they have the same problem in Europe. I mean, Russia's been very effective at that. These people that read various conspiracy theory outlets that are just not accurate, and they actually model Russian propaganda. And I have to explain to them, you're actually a victim of Russian propaganda. And what you're saying, you're spreading Russian propaganda. And they respond, oh, no, I'm not. Yeah, your anti-war sentiments are Russian propaganda. If you're a true American, you want war and lots of war. No, I'm not. Yes, you are Russian. You're a Russian bot. Now, Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner was asked about those same comments coming from McCaul during Sunday's interview on CNN, State of the Union, with Jake Tapper. And he was asked whether or not he thought his colleague was correct and if there was a big problem. And he says, quote, oh, absolutely true. We see directly coming from Russia attempts to mass communications that are anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia messages, some of which we even hear being uttered on the House floor. Like we should be America first and anti-war. We shouldn't be spending all of our money on a foreign country, war in a foreign country. That apparently is the pro-Russian messages that are being shared on the House floor. He says, I mean, there are members of Congress today who still incorrectly say that this conflict between Russia and Ukraine is over NATO, which of course it is not. Vladimir Putin having made it very clear, both publicly and to his own population, that his view is that this is a conflict of a much broader claim of Russia to Eastern Europe, including claiming all of Ukraine territory as Russia's, he continued. To the extent that this propaganda takes hold, it makes it more difficult for us to really see this as an authoritarian versus democracy battle, which is what it is. President Xi of China, Vladimir Putin himself have identified it as such. We need to stand up for democracy. We need to make certain that we know that authoritarian regimes never stop when they start an aggression. So, yeah, this is where we're at with it. Okay, a couple of points to make on this. First of all, they're wrong, right? They're saying that if you are America first, if you're anti-war, then you are believing Russian propaganda. It doesn't really matter what secret documents Russia puts out there. I mean, we as Americans are blatant in their face saying we're trying to undermine you. I mean, that's American politicians are saying that all the time. They're saying that they want to break Russia up into little pieces and defeat Putin, and they're pretty upfront and outspoken about it. The other thing that's really concerning about this suddenly leaking now, right? I mean, what the timing of this? Here we are heading into an election, and they're saying, "Oh no, Russian disinformation. We have proof now. We have evidence of this because of this secret document that is being reported on not only in Washington Post, which is a left-wing outlet, but then I've showed you Daily Wire, which is a right-wing outlet. So you have these two different. This isn't a left issue. This is left-right combined. This is bipartisan. It's a bipartisan issue that the Russians are using disinformation and they're spreading it around. And what do we need to do about it? Right? We need to silence it. That's what they're going to ultimately say. We have to shut down those nighttime entertainment shows that are spewing Russian propaganda. That is exactly where they're going with this new bombshell document that they've discovered from European intelligence agencies that, oh, interesting, when Donald Trump wins the 2024 election, they'll say it was because of Russian disinformation. And we go right into RUSSIAGATE all over again. Like we didn't learn a single lesson at all. So that is what's scary about these latest reports. Absolutely and completely terrifying.